What is up, everybody? So yesterday on March 14th, 2024, Kathleen Zellner filed a second motion for post-conviction scientific testing. She wants to DNA test the Rav4. Huge thanks to Lacey Thacker and Jax61 on X for sending me this document. I will link both of their accounts in the description below. Make sure to go give them both a follow, as well as me at Allegedly a Show on X. But make sure to give them both a follow on X. Huge thanks to them for sending me this document. So yesterday, Kathleen Zellner posted this on her X account. New motion filed for touch DNA testing of the Rav4. Shirtless driver and other deposit skin cells all over seats, gear shift, hood releases, hood prop, license plate, lug wrench, blinker light, motion on our website. The guilty do not request DNA testing, but the innocent do. So you can go read this document for yourself. It is linked on KathleenZellner.com. We're going to go over it right now. Here is what is in the document. Second motion for post-conviction scientific testing. Stephen Avery, through his current post-conviction attorneys, move for a second order to allow Stephen Avery to conduct post-conviction testing for touch DNA evidence in the vehicle of the victim for the murder of which Stephen Avery was convicted. Of course, the victim is Teresa Halbach. Besides, Stephen Avery's counsel now has the financial resources donated by Stephen Avery's supporters to conduct additional testing on items from Teresa Halbach's vehicle that have never been tested previously for touch DNA. Stephen Avery is requesting, pursuant to the 2007 DNA order entered by Judge Willis, that he be allowed to do such testing. The untested items of evidence that Mr. Avery requests to conduct testing on are as follows: the driver and passenger seats, the dashboard, the gear shift, the steering wheel, the interior and exterior hood latch release, the broken blinker light, item A15, the hood prop, the battery cable, the battery, the rear cargo area, the interior, the exterior cargo door, the lug wrench, item A16, the license plate, items AJ and AK, Columet inventory NOS 8313 and 8305. If you're guilty, and you know you're guilty, and you know your DNA is all over this vehicle, all over whatever the crime scene happens to be, there's no way you're going to request DNA testing to be done on that crime scene, on that vehicle, because it's just going to prove that you are guilty. I feel it's extraordinarily, it would have to be extraordinarily rare for someone that is guilty to ask for DNA testing to be done. So the fact that Stephen Avery and Kathleen Zellner want this DNA testing to be done is pretty big to me, because they must know something is up with the Rav4. And if the state doesn't allow this DNA testing to be done, it just proves that there's more to this case than it's simple, he's guilty, they're guilty, they did it. Why wouldn't you be like, sure, go test it, his DNA is all over it? Like, it's pretty simple. If the state knows Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey are guilty, they're going to allow this DNA testing to be done instantly with no argument. Be like, sure, here's DNA is everywhere. Go bananas, go bonkers, and test everything. So we will see what they have to say. Procedural background. Stephen Avery was charged on November 15th, 2005 with first-degree intentional homicide and mutilation of a corpse. The complaint was later amended to include possession of a firearm by a felon. The case eventually proceeded to trial on February 5th, 2007 before Judge Patrick Willis. A jury convicted Stephen Avery of first-degree intentional homicide and felony in possession of a firearm. The jury acquitted Avery of mutilating a corpse. Stephen Avery has filed 3 motions for post-conviction relief, which all have been denied by the trial court. Currently, his third motion for post-conviction relief is on appeal. The state is in the process of filing a response to Stephen Avery's brief on appeal. History of the Rav4. The case began with the disappearance of Teresa Halbach, a 25-year-old photographer. On November 5, 2005, volunteer searchers found Teresa Halbach's Rav4 on the southeast corner of the Avery salvage yard. On November 7, 2005, small drops of blood were discovered in front of Teresa Halbach's vehicle, on the driver and passenger seats, driver's floor, and the rear passenger door jamb. These blood drops produced a complete DNA profile of Stephen Avery. Suspiciously, there were no bloody fingerprints of Stephen Avery in or on the vehicle, despite the fact that he could not have been wearing gloves when the blood was deposited. That's something I always asked about. I always wondered about, why are there no fingerprints of Stephen Avery anywhere, but his blood is all over the place? It's very interesting to me. None of the 8 fingerprints found in and on the victim's vehicle belong to Stephen Avery. Stephen Avery's DNA was discovered on the hood latch on a swab from the hood latch of the vehicle. Mr. Avery has disputed in other pleadings that this swab actually came from the hood latch. Teresa Halbach's blood was found in the cargo area. Suspiciously, there were no mixture of Teresa Halbach's and Stephen Avery's blood, despite the fact the state claimed that Stephen Avery cut his finger during the attack and placed Teresa Halbach in the rear cargo area of her vehicle. Therefore, Teresa Halbach's Rav4 contained evidence of the violence inflicted on Teresa Halbach, and the Rav4 is the primary crime scene connected to her murder, since it is the only place where her blood was located. Now remember, there was no blood, no DNA, no anything of Teresa Halbach ever found in Stephen Avery's bedroom. In 2007, this court entered a broad order permitting ongoing DNA testing at the request of Stephen Avery's defense counsel. Stephen Avery's counsel was allowed to conduct additional DNA scientific testing without objection by the state. Certain forensic items in possession of the state were examined and retested by Stephen Avery's forensic experts. However, no new testing was done of the Rav4, particularly touch DNA testing. Stephen Avery's counsel has obtained the affidavit of Carl Reck, who is a DNA analyst and professional molecule biologist, to explain the scientific capability of touch DNA testing on the items that Stephen Avery is requesting testing on. As Dr. Reich explains, touch DNA is evidence with or the strong likelihood of only SLOUGHED skin or SEBUM being present. Almost anything that has been touched, handled, used, grasped, lifted, dropped, or brushed against an individual's skin cell can produce a DNA profile. According to a new witness, Thomas Sawinski, the Rav4 was pushed onto the Avery property after Teresa Halbach's disappearance, observing Bobby Dassey pushing Teresa Halbach's vehicle onto the Avery property after her disappearance. Attached and incorporated, Thomas Sawinski provided an affidavit to Stephen Avery's post-conviction counsel on April 11th, 2021. And then it goes over Thomas Sawinski's statement, which we have gone over many times. Because of the new evidence, certain items should be tested for the following reasons. In order to move the vehicle onto the Avery property, the vehicle gear shift knob would had to have been touched, pushed, and pulled to move the transmission from park to neutral and push the vehicle. Because of the new witness, Thomas Sawinski described a shirtless Bobby Dassey in possession of Teresa Halbach's Rav4. Bobby Dassey would have had Bobby Dassey would have had to have made contact with the cloth driver's seat, which may have contained SLOUGHED skin or SEBUM that would have likely deposited touch DNA and would likely produced a DNA profile. The Rav4 had to have been steered when it was moved onto the Avery property. Therefore, it is probable that the perpetrator touching the steering wheel would have deposited skin cells or SEBUM, which would have likely deposited touch DNA and likely would produce a DNA profile. The battery cable of the Rav4 was disconnected, which would require the following actions: unlatch the hood, prop the hood with the prop rod, handle the cable itself, use a wrench to loosen the cable terminal, and pulled away from the now loosened cable. All surfaces that would have been in contact with the individual who disconnected the battery. Therefore, it is probable that the perpetrator performing such tasks would have likely deposited skin cells or SEBUM in the area listed, which would likely deposit touch DNA and likely produce a DNA profile. The Rav4 blinker light, which was broken and found in the cargo area of the Rav4 after Teresa Halbach's disappearance, the light had to have been touched by the individual who put the blinker light in the cargo area. Therefore, it is probable that the perpetrator touching the blinker light would have deposited skin cells or SEBUM, which would likely deposit touch DNA and likely produce a DNA profile. The blood spatter found in the rear cargo area of the Rav4, which was identified as being belonged to Teresa Halbach, would have been the result of crimes against Teresa Halbach occurring in the rear cargo area of the vehicle. The Rav4 model does not have electric door closers, and therefore closing the rear door hatch requires pressing down on the outside of the cargo door. In order to access this area, the perpetrator would have had to have opened the cargo door and latch the outside surface of the door and would likely deposit touch DNA and likely produce a DNA profile. Teresa Halbach had a head injury that produced blood spatter in the rear cargo area of her vehicle. Teresa Halbach's vehicle had a lug wrench that was found in the rear cargo area that had been removed from its storage place. If the lug wrench was used as a weapon, it is likely that testing for touch DNA would produce a DNA profile. Touch DNA testing performed on items described above has the potential of identifying a third party who have committed the murder of Teresa Halbach, or in the alternative, has the potential to further implicate Stephen Avery in the murder. That's where we're going to leave off part 1. The next one is going to go over new evidence in the case. That is what the new section is titled. It is titled New Evidence. What do you think of this new filing on behalf of Kathleen Zellner? Let me know what you think. Leave some comments below. I hope you're having a good day, and I will see you again soon.